This video is sponsored by War Thunder. Obviously in this video I missed a lot of interesting things, players, events, probably a few updates, and maybe even got a couple of things wrong as well. If you noticed something that I didn't, call me out on it in the comments below.
Astralis.
It's Astralis.
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 Astralis. Astralis. Astralis.
If I ask you about the greatest teams in the history of Counter-Strike, who are the first ones that come to mind? If you're from South America, you might imagine LG or SK from 2016 to 2017. Not wrong by any means. I'm sure many North Americans would also agree with you. If you're a boomer, you'd probably think of NIP from 2012 to 2014 or Fnatic in 2015. Also pretty valid. If your brain is rotting from watching videos at 2x speed, you probably would imagine FaZe Clan or something. I don't know. There is an answer to this question though. You see, winning a championship and titles is everything. Winning back-to-back means you've created a dynasty. Winning 3 in a row, a three-peat, is an accolade reserved only for the best of the best. A title so prestigious it hasn't even been obtained in the history of football. Or football. Football, I guess. An achievement so coveted it hasn't been replicated in over 22 years of team sports since the Los Angeles Lakers in 2002. There is only one right answer though as to who the greatest team of all time is. And if you watch Counter-Strike, you know that that team is inarguably Astralis. A team that dominated for so long that most fans want to forget the years of watching their favorite team fail over and over again. A team that was so good that people were bored of watching them win. A team that was so annoying that there were rumors of some secret settings that made them play better. A team that from 2016 to the end of their tenure made nearly 10 million USD, winning 23 top-tier events, 4 majors, and changed the way the game was played forever. All of that, and it doesn't even include the individual players' achievements. For that, we'd have to go back to 2013, half a year since the release of Counter-Strike Global Offensive and the game's popularity slowly ramping. Out of all the teams here looking to take a top spot, our focus is going to be on one that wasn't even considered to be in the top 30 in the eyes of HLTV. Copenhagen Wolves was a team from Copenhagen that consisted of Kjaerbye, Wants, Device, Dupree, and Fetish. A freaky ass alias. This team at the time had only won a few local lands against fellow Danish squads Fnatic and Western Wolves, who did have the exact same branding as the guys that we're talking about, but I promise that they're different, so I'm going to call them WW. Although it's hard to really trust HLTV's ranking at the time, they claim that WW were the 3rd best team in the world after finishing 2nd place at one event. Anyone who wasn't named Ninjas in Pajamas was sort of irrelevant until Fnatic dropped their Danish lineup for a more infamous Swedish one. So 2 former Danes of Fnatic, Xipnix and Freeze, joined forces with Copenhagen Wolves, creating the trio that would go unbroken for the next decade. The team would immediately see improvement, even taking a map off the legendary NIP squad and Very games. Things were looking up for the boys if it weren't for the fact that they kept signing and dropping players like they're running a 7-man rotation before just deciding to get rid of the team entirely in December of 2013. After the trio won the European Championship under the Team Denmark banner, Team Dignitas stepped in and signed the boys. Not long after, the squad showed their resilience and won their first Tier 1 tournament, besting the beefed up Titan squad in a very close best of 5. They then went on to place 3rd and 4th at Kjaerbye 2014, which was the first time they ever made the playoffs at a Valve major event. But despite the success, being eliminated by NIP on 4 separate occasions can take a toll on anyone, so Kjaerbye decided to swap teams with the formerly WW rivals and got replaced by AZ. Within 9-ish months, the other Danish guys got signed and dropped by 3 different organizations, N Faculty, 3D Max, and ECS Gaming, before landing yet another deal with Copenhagen Wolves. The roster that got signed consisted of Kerrigan, Kjaerbye, Nico, Pimp, and Glaive. Even after Dignitas immediately signed AZ, they beat NIP in a full best of 3 before once again placing 3rd and 4th at ESL Cologne 2014, solidifying themselves as the best team in Denmark just because they beat NIP. One thing I would like to point out though is that the tournament they defeated NIP in was a tournament held and run by Dignitas, so I think that's pretty funny that they were never able to take them down until then. Not insinuating anything, just food for thought. Towards the end of the year, both teams were kind of going through it with not amazing results, so the Wolves dropped Kerrigan, Nico, and Kjaerbye, who then went back to Dignitas, replacing AZ. The Wolves brought in Kjaerbye, Kadian, and Nile, but Nile apparently had a VAC ban that somehow went unnoticed, so they immediately kicked him for Tenski, and then the Wolves 2 months later replaced Tenski and Kadian with Nico and AZ yet again. Kerrigan joined Dignitas in early December, replacing Fetish, and 2 days later, Copenhagen Wolves kicked Glaive due to, quote, unprofessional conduct. And by that they mean he threatened to boycott an event for not letting his girlfriend into the venue and was subsequently handed a fine by the organizers. Things were not looking too great for Copenhagen Wolves, as issues also flustered internally since their manager was being investigated for theft just a month prior. Also, the first reply to this article was Pith, who was playing for Team Orbit at the time. This has nothing to do with the video, I just thought it was interesting how dedicated he was to this story. Device and Dupree start the new year being named the 20th and the 16th best players of 2014. And with all this drama and rumors flying around, 2015 starts off with a bang after Dignitas players get poached by TSM after yet another playoff meltdown at MLG X Games Aspen. Also, another thing I just wanted to point out was that the link to the article on the old Team Dignitas website has turned into a gambling information form. I love esports. Dignitas immediately signed another roster who were the same guys that Copenhagen Wolves just dropped, plus TSM's old IGL fetish. So because Copenhagen Wolves are now teamless, they decide to pick up a rather questionable roster and immediately got the chance to play TSM, who showed them absolutely no mercy in the ESL Winter 2014 qualifier, telling everyone that the Danish rivalry is between these guys and nobody else. After months of TSM struggling to break through to the semifinals of an event, as they so often did in 2014, this newly anointed roster of Kerrigan, Device, Dupree, Kjaerbye, and Exipnix had not only made it back to the semifinals of a major, but they had toppled Fnatic in the third place decider match to finish T3. Not necessarily a premier achievement, but with both Device and Dupree finishing with solid ratings, Kerrigan at the helm, and overall one of the strongest Danish rosters we had seen in CSGO to date, TSM looked poised for a breakout year in 2015. After a string of strong online performances to start the year, TSM came into ESL 1 Katowice 2014 looking to prove themselves at an offline major event. Placed into the toughest group with a prime Virtus Pro roster and a dark horse in Cloud9, TSM successfully made it out of the gauntlet, before yet again falling 2-0 to the eventual finalists NIP. So it seemed that it wasn't yet time for the Danes. Months later, they made it to the finals of Copenhagen Games 2015, getting 2-0'd by Virtus Pro, but showing decent form offline, albeit against a less stacked field of teams. Device skipped EPL finals in April that year due to a viral infection that left him with a fever, throat pain, and coughing up blood. And interesting, if you know this little guy, he was 19 at the time, and he had just been released from his team Planet Key Dynamics, so he filled in for Device's tournament. Somehow they actually topped their group despite having Caden as a stand-in, and fell to Titan in 3 maps in the semifinals. With Device back in the summer, they'd power through a Kingwin roster featuring Rain and Scream to reach the Cologne 2015 semifinals, before falling to an Envious gearing up for their major winning performance in October of that year. This TSM roster was increasingly showing promise, playing with better form against better teams more consistently. More importantly, they didn't rely solely on the superstar performance from Device to win best of 3s. Dupree and Kjaerbye both would finish in HLTV's top 20 list of 2015. Disappointingly though, TSM would bomb out in the quarterfinals of that year's last major in Cluj-Napoca. And in an additional twist of bad news, the relationship between the TSM organization and its players had unfortunately soured, partially due to the removal of their team manager from the TSM payroll, Frederick Biskov. Without getting into it too much, the TSM CEO believed that Frederick wasn't worth the money, though the TSM players felt like he was so invaluable to their success that they paid him out of their own pocket, since the stingy TSM wouldn't, foreshadowing the organization's reputation of ruining relationships with players, but that's a story for another time. This collapse led to the temporary formation of one of the cooler teams in CSGO history, Team ? Orgless, Maidenless, and broke, the Danish roster began 2016 hungry to get down to business. Their first major move was to acquire Zonic. Regarded as the best Danish 1.6 player of all time, he had retired from competition during the transition to Global Offensive before re-emerging in the later half of 2015 as Dignitas' coach. This guy was a threat back in the later years of 1.6, an absolute menace, a freak, a Zoid if you would. Doesn't get any simpler than that. Though he definitely wasn't excited about the game's commercial future, he clearly had a mind for tactics. Weeks later, amid the rumors of the Team ? roster signing to an existing organization like FaZe Clan, the players surprised the entire scene with the formation of Astralis, a new organization co-owned by one former TSM manager, Frederick Biskov. But to simply call it a new organization doesn't do it justice. Astralis as an organization was determined to move the game's ecosystem forward, offering players an equity stake in the organization, promoting transparency on another level, and openly discussing player salaries. A lot of promising business practices that do not reflect the state of the team as we know them today. Oh, and also Device was Devi for a month until Valve forced him to change it back. Those bastards. Their first test was DreamHack Open Leipzig against a young Dignitas roster featuring a 17-year-old up-and-comer named Kjaerbye. They made quick work of them on Overpass and topped their group at the event before losing in the semifinals to, once again, a Luminosity roster gearing up for their major winning run in Columbus. They entered IEM Katowice 2014 with little expectations to succeed, and far surpassed them, going a perfect 5-0 in the group stages to land them a semifinal spot. They fell to the eventual winners Fnatic, but started 2016 off with a decent, if not overly characteristic performance. A month later, at the first major of the year, the world's best CS players would travel to North America's first major in Columbus, Ohio. There, they'd take their revenge against Fnatic on their way to the semifinals, quite convincingly, I might add, and then finish 3rd and 4th again. It's not even funny anymore. They literally just can't do it. I think they lose just as much in the semifinals as they do the quarters. After an embarrassing loss to Optic at the EPL Season 3 playoffs and a last place exit at the hands of Luminosity, as well as a crash out at DreamHack Malmo, catalyzed the first 2 roster changes of the Astralis era. So please help give me a hand in welcoming Kjaerbye. I'm sure this will go well and nothing can go wrong. Posting a 1.03 rating over 2015, this was before the rating system got updated, by the way, he was one of Dignitas' star riflers at just 18 years of age, and he was seen as the boost in firepower Astralis needed to get over the line and into the grand finals. However, mixed results at smaller tournaments and offline group stages, including but not limited to getting decimated by Cloud9 with Slemmy at ECS Season 1, brought Astralis to the second major of 2016. However, again, since Kjaerbye had played the major qualifiers with Dignitas, he was ineligible to play for Astralis in the major, and in his place was a young 20-year-old from Copenhagen Wolves, Glaive. The last time he'd played in a major was in 2014 at DreamHack Winter, and very coincidentally, he played with Kjaerbye. Oh fuck, I hope his girlfriend is allowed into the venue this time. Also, earlier this year, Glaive played and won a game with a collapsed lung, which is pretty fucking badass. Anyway, their goal was to maintain their legend status, guaranteeing the team a spot for the next major. Getting to the quarters is light work for guys like these, but this was way harder than originally thought because Dupree was hospitalized and had to get surgery mid-tournament, meaning Coach Zonic had to sub in. Zonic has subbed in for his players' matches more often than you would expect coaches to, but he hasn't really competed as a player in over 4 years. All Zonic had to do was win a single best of 3 with another stand-in against Dignitas. Of course, it was Dignitas who also had to awkwardly play without Kjaerbye. I imagine from his point of view, it was like watching your current girlfriend fight with your ex-girlfriend in public. I hope they don't hit each other too hard. But you know who will hit hard? The tanks and today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game of all time, and it's available for free now on consoles and PC. Immerse yourself in the intense combat of War Thunder, where incredibly detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sound effects place you right at the helm of the most powerful war machines of our time. I'm so serious, my friends and I played a ton of War Thunder growing up, and I am absolutely in love with how detailed the hitboxes are and how satisfying the gunplay is while flying planes and driving tanks. Every vehicle is carefully modeled individual components like engines, fuel tanks, weapons, and crew. All these things can take damage or be disabled by enemy fire, and different types of armor, shells, and missiles behave like their real-world counterparts. From biplanes and armored cars of the early 90s to the pretty fighter jets and main battle tanks of today, you can take control of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 major nations to play around with. And the best part to me is that you can play War Thunder on basically anything. War Thunder runs on the in-house developed Dagger engine, which is heavily modified to deliver a lag-free experience with beautiful graphics and high frame rates even on lower-end machines. When I was younger, I was playing War Thunder on the worst laptop known to man and was still having a blast, no pun intended. And you know I'm not kidding, because there are over 70 million players from around the world that you can join in PvP battles. You think all of these players have fancy top-of-the-line computers? No chance. So go dive into the breathtaking experience that is War Thunder. With a mind-blowing amount of high-quality content there is to discover, there's just simply no better game suited for fans of military history. You can play War Thunder for free on PC, Xbox, or PlayStation now by using my link in the pinned comment or the description down below. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms that includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium account time. But it's only available for a limited time, so be quick. Thanks again, War Thunder, for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. Somehow, though, against all odds, they still managed to pull out a win against them and finish 5th to 8th overall. Kerrigan stated after the game, quote, "I feel like I won an event," which to me, honestly, while I get what he means, it seems like a poor thing to say when you only made it to the quarterfinals. Obviously, nobody asked for my opinion, and I understand the circumstances are different when you're playing with a coach and a stand-in, but if I heard my teammates say that, I would think he's not trying anymore. Maybe I have too much killer mentality, you know, like job's not finished type shit, but I would want to try even harder for my teammate who is injured. Like, win no matter what life throws at you. I personally think that the more you embrace your disadvantages, the less disadvantaged you become. But I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy. Let me know if you think I'm dumb in the comments. Anyway, at this point, the story of this Danish roster seemed written before every big event. They'd make it out of the groups, maybe into the semifinals if Device and Dupree are firing on all cylinders, but their run would invariably end there. It almost seems as if they lose more in the semis than they do the quarters. And up until this major, I was almost right. During the group stage, Device gave an interview with HLTV praising Glaive for his ability to adapt into their system. Backstage, Kerrigan was listening going, "What the fuck?" And after ESL Clone 2016, Dignitas would kick Tensky for an 18-year-old Magisk boy. That name will become important very shortly. Astralis would remain the roster of Kerrigan, Exipnix, Dupree, Device, and Kjaerbye for a few more months, but the performances somehow got worse. They got steamrolled by Maus in E-League and lost a heroic with Glaive at a small local tournament for Danish teams, then lost to Dignitas 2 times in a row. But these weren't just any old losses. It means a lot to a team who was for the longest time the undisputed best team in Denmark. Losing like this doesn't mean that you're not the best team in the world. It means you're not even the best team in your country. Then finally, a bomb out at the group stage of ESL 1 New York against Optic Gaming with Tarek would result in benching Kerrigan and picking up Glaive, who at that point would be assuming the IGL duties without any tier 1 experience as a leader. Losing to Danish teams is one thing, but being eliminated by a North American team, that's a fate worse than death. They'd close out the year with a string of good successes. A good run at IEM Oakland where, yup, you guessed it, semifinals. They were looking quite good up until the E-League Season 2 finals, but a second loss to Tarek in the grand finals no less is something unforgivable. All Optic has done, I fear, was to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. ECS Season 2 is exactly 1 week later and Astralis were not fucking around. The weights came off, the bell rang, Astralis wants revenge. Their first opponent is Optic Gaming. Don't even give them a chance to stand back up. 16-7. FaZe Clan up next, Kerrigan's new team. Fuck out of here. 16-3. 10 rounds lost in 2 games. Semifinals. 2-time defending major champions. 16-9. I don't hear the bell. 16-4. Grand finals against Optic once again. Until this point, Astralis has never beaten Optic on Overpass. And seeing as that's where Astralis got eliminated last time, I bet they felt real comfortable picking that map again. But like I told you, if you don't let them get back up, they don't. They're on Astralis' turf now. Optic try to fight back, but they stand up just a bit too late. Astralis pick up their first ever Tier 1 LAN win at ECS Season 2 finals, but more importantly, their well-earned revenge over a North American fluke team. In all seriousness though, this literally killed Optic Gaming. They didn't get near a Tier 1 trophy ever again. They actually never recovered from this. Fast forward into 2017, Device, Dupree, Exipnix, and Kjaerbye were all named top 20 players of 2016. And there the Danes stood again, favorites to make a deep run at the major, yet ever aware of their historical semi-final ceiling at major events. After a really rough opening game against Godsent, losing 16-6 on Train, they bounced back, shit-stomping Optic and Liquid because of their personal vendetta against NA team. But also NA teams are just historically fucking terrible at majors. Astralis then snuck into the playoffs with a 3-2 record during groups. Coming into the quarters, they'd have to face off against the Undertaker coming into his prime and a Flamey on Fire, averaging a 1.7 rating during the group stage. Not that any of this mattered though, because unfortunately for the rest of the teams playing, Navi made the mistake of letting Astralis get back up. Astralis powered past Navi in 3 maps and swiftly defeated a weakened Disco Doppelin Fnatic 16-5 on Nuke for the 2-0 in the semifinals to reach their first ever major final in CSGO. The forums online were filled with mentions of Astralis as chronic chokers, and even despite their good form offline at the end of 2016, fans were bracing themselves for the inevitable collapse. But something about this Danish roster's mentality seemed different than in the past years, and that's because it was. Behind the scenes in the Astralis camp, things were in fact different. In late 2016, they had hired a sports psychologist, Mia Stelberg, and through her direction, Astralis quietly pioneered a shift in the world of professional CS. They began to align their training practices with more what you'd expect from a traditional professional athlete, training their physical wellness in the gym, adopting cleaner sleep and eating habits, and developing their mental fortitude with trained psychological staff. There's proof of this because you can see Dupree eating a banana.
What do you think?
Well, here's the thing.
Device spoke after their grueling quarterfinals against Navi, noting how older iterations of the Danish roster would have collapsed in the best of 3, and their work with the sports psychologist improved the environment for criticism and encouragement. Their fortitude was going to be tested against the legendary Polish lineup Virtus Pro, and despite the fact that VP aren't the same plow that they were in 2014, they were still an incredible team, having won E-League Season 1 just a few months prior. And in a very tough battle with all 3 maps that went into double digits, Astralis emerged victorious off the back of Kjaerbye's MVP performance, and lift the first major trophy of their careers because of it. But I just want to deviate for a moment because I want to ask how deserving of the MVP trophy was Kjaerbye. Kjaerbye would also top the server against former teammate Kerrigan's new international squad FaZe Clan at the finals of IEM Katowice that year, delivering Astralis their second premier tournament win in 3 months and Exipnix his first and only career MVP. They'd come into Krakow that year heavy favorites to win the title along with Brazilian powerhouse SK. Instead, Zeus won a motherfucking major, and back-to-back quarterfinal exits at DreamHack Malmo and ESL 1 New York left questions open about Astralis' longevity. They had spent most of the first half of 2017 at number 1 on HLTV's ranking, but had fallen off significantly in performance, especially on the big stage. So a bitter second place finish at E-League Premier behind Kerrigan and FaZe would be the last good placement for Astralis, as Device would battle health issues in the last month of the year, forcing Zonic to stand in at IEM Oakland in November, and then Pimp and Dennis to stand in for the year's remaining online and offline matches. The year begins with the major right off the bat, E-League Boston, and Astralis go into the event confident and healthier than before, and leave quicker than they got there, with the Danish trio's worst major lesser placing ever at 12th to 14th. Once again defeated by the hands of Tarek. Well, at least they lost to the major champion. Reeling from a disappointing 6-month run, the Danes retreated to Europe, likely planning on reconvening as a team and figuring out their issues for their 2018 tournament campaign. Instead, Kjaerbye would shock the entire CS scene in early February, announcing his abrupt choice to leave Astralis and join Danish rivals North. I'm sure he won't regret this decision at all.
It's like, what the f have I done?
Speculations began flying as the decision was made so quickly that the rest of the team didn't even know about it until the announcement. The community quickly jumped in on this, calling him a snake and a traitor, but he was only 19 at the time, having the added pressure of a football club asking him to name his price, and these rich fucks are gonna pay him anything. They're playing from inside a stadium with cans of energy drinks on top of their computers. Kjaerbye said in a recent interview that the CEO of North told him not to say anything publicly or to his team because they wanted to make a statement, basically giving the middle finger to Astralis, which obviously burned any of the bridges he had with them. Yeah, publicly paint the 19-year-old as a villain in front of the entire community. Smart choice, Mr. North. Very brave of you to make that decision for him. It's truly a mystery why your organization failed. Very appropriately, they decided to pick up former Dignitas and North Star Magisk, who had been floundering in whatever the fuck Optic was doing for months prior and was looking for a new team that wasn't owned by a bunch of Call of Duty players. I mean, the guys did always struggle to play Magisk when he was on Dignitas, so if you can't beat him, buy him. That's what North would have did. On the bright side though, Astralis under the helm of IGL Glaive had begun to carve out a new tactical age of CS, consistently and quickly capitalizing on man advantages in the mid-round and playing a tight style of CS powered by proper spacing, utility, and trade. Dwindling was the loose talent-driven style pioneered by teams like Fnatic and op stars like Kenny S and Guardian. Astralis intended to create a fundamentally sound system that excelled at everything, but did not require performances from stars like Dupree or Device. They began 2018 ranked 7th in the world, and after yet another semi-finals finish in Kjaerbye for the culture, of course, it seemed like Kerrigan was about to finally surpass his former team. But they would be looking to make a statement at DreamHack Masters Marseille. Marseille? The statement in question was, you guys fucking suck, because they absolutely dominated this event. With 4 players in the top 6 ratings throughout the entire tournament, they didn't drop a single map on their way to a trophy. Also, the Prime Minister of Denmark tweeted at them, congratulating them after winning. They spent part of their prep in February on a fucking warship in Copenhagen. Look at Edward jump down the vent into the wrong bomb site because he is scared for his life out there. And this prep was not for a mere tournament, they are preparing for an era. The day after, Zonic signed a 2-year contract extension, a subtle indicator that Astralis intended to not just win tournaments, but create a legacy. A couple weeks later, Astralis lost yet another nail-biting head-to-head versus Kerrigan in the finals of IEM Sydney, with all 3 maps being frustratingly close. But if you've been paying attention, you know that losing to certain people only pisses them off.
There's a new feeling. Pride in someone else. Unfortunately, it's overshadowed by all this unyielding rage!
A month later, losing only 1 map the entire weekend, they claimed yet another trophy at EPL Season 7 Finals, the second in their Intel Grand Slam run against Team Liquid, who were looking really good up until the finals. They also won ECS Season 5 Finals against Team Liquid, who were looking really good up until the finals, and dropped 0 maps at E-League Premier 2018, where they beat Team Liquid in the finals, who were looking really good up until... These guys were winning so much that they felt comfortable enough to just skip entire events just to let Device, who wasn't even at 100% during these stompings, rest just a little bit longer. It began dawning upon teams that when Astralis get in that zone and they hear that bell ring, they are just simply winning and there's nothing you can do about it. Amidst their rise to dominance, there were concerns about the team's consistency again after the August player break when they had a typical hiccup against a familiar face in North at DreamHack Stockholm. They lost to North in 2 different best of 3s, including a heart-shattering 16-1 loss on Dust 2. It seemed like North were really just fueled by hatred this tournament. Despite this though, I swear after these tough games, Astralis always seemed to find some Michael Jordan, I took that personally motivation, then go into the next tournament with a personal vendetta and fire in their eyes. They never seem broken and battered or demoralized in any way. They always just find a way to come back stronger. And unfortunately for the rest of the planet, that next tournament happened to be the Face It London Major. Any doubts of consistency were laid to rest as Astralis just dismantled the entire world. North used up all of their angry power juice against the gang in Stockholm and got eliminated in the groups, so Astralis had to take their frustrations out on the best teams on the planet. And Complexity, who got quickly swept aside while every other team struggled to beat them for some reason. Team Liquid got their chance to make a god bleed when they won a single group stage match against them in overtime. Same with NIP, who had to take them into quadruple overtime just to win a single game on Mirage, which is a pretty good testament of how good you have to play to barely beat them.
All that for a drop of blood.
But even with Astralis' few losses, you get the impression that this wasn't even close to them at their best, and they were still going to make these games extremely close. They also seem to improve a lot on their Dust 2 since the last time they got curb stomped, and MIBR had the displeasure of witnessing perfection. 16-0 in a Tom Cruise masterclass, going 24-9 with a 2.19 rating. Astralis are now playoff bound, and what do they have to worry about? FaZe, the 4th best team in the world? They put up a good fight, but Astralis aren't going to let Kerrigan win a major without them. And as for the number 3 and number 2 best teams in the world, they both made the same mistake. They decided to play Nuke.
Liquid usually allows Astralis to pick Nuke. Now, they've won 17 in a row on Nuke.
You see, when you are picking and banning maps against Astralis, you are already at a disadvantage. You can't ban maps you don't play. You are banning maps you are afraid to play Astralis on. So let's just say you're Team Liquid. These are the maps that you're good at, so you ban Train. Well, Astralis already banned your best map, and then they're going to pick the map that they win 97% of the time on. But what if you ban that map first, you're asking? Well, then they're just going to pick the map that they win 87% of the time on. And then you realize that you can't pick your second best map because they win 81% of the time on that map. So you have to pick your third best map, which they also win 71% of the time on. And by this point, you are realizing that you are the 3rd best team in the world and are so criminally outmatched that they even banned one of their own best maps just because they don't take chances. Because they don't need to take chances. Because they know that they're better than you. And if by some miracle you manage to sneak out a win on one of those 2 maps, the 3rd map is one that you just watched them 16-0 a team on. It was already over before it began. This isn't an isolated incident either. The 2nd best team in the world, Na'Vi, had the exact same issue in the final. Astralis banned your best map. You have to ban the map that you literally don't play because it's your permaban. And now Astralis get a free win because they picked Nuke. The series is already 1-1 before you even got the chance to pick your own map. And the worst part about picking your own map is that it won't even matter. They're better than you on that map too. Sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. Astralis are usually the windshield though. So as they lift their 2nd major trophy, Astralis win Blast Istanbul on their way to Chicago. The teams there weren't the worst, but they weren't the best either. I don't need to make any unnecessary comments about the Flusha Golden Cloud9 or Stewie Tarek MIBR. I feel like those teams speak for themselves. But hey, 125 grand is 125 grand. IM Chicago rolls around in November and Astralis make it to yet another finals. And you can see how their consistency and unforgiving play is made apparent just by looking at the stat lines. Fnatic was plus 30 in the semifinals. They had more kills and less deaths while the games were close, and still managed to lose to a more fundamentally sound team in Astralis. I mean, just look at this. Like, this is hell. Like, this is what hell looks like if you're a CS player. How are you supposed to win against this? Their matchup in the finals was, of course, Liquid, who decided to change nothing and lost on Mirage and Nuke. The only difference was that this series was a best of 5, so Liquid didn't lose immediately. They still had their map pick Inferno up their sleeve, which is how they beat... Oh. Well... At least they were looking really good up until the finals. Next up was ECS Season 6, which was a little more of the same. Astralis make it look easy, drop like a single map or 2 to MIBR, who apparently weren't as bad as I was previously insinuating. Well, at least the Brazil part of the Made in Brazil was not that bad. The other 2 I can't speak on. But Astralis still make it all the way to the finals, where they play the most fundamental top-tier Counter-Strike you will ever see. MIBR were playing out of their minds, but it was almost unbelievable how perfect Astralis were playing during the ECS Season 6 finals. Even Nico on FaZe had a hard time believing what he saw. He seemed to be suggesting that Astralis were using some sort of bug or cheating in some capacity with how often they were getting kills through the smoke. He even doubled down in the replies to the clips that were being given for context. Apparently, he was hinting at the players exploiting something with NVIDIA Freestyle, which was some software that came with the NVIDIA graphics cards that lets you mess around with in-game visuals. Some were saying this isn't the case. Taco made a comment saying that something like this does in fact exist, and others were saying that it was FPL player Loba's secret settings. I was pretty sure at the time that using software like this in a tournament wasn't allowed. Also, there are tournament admins constantly monitoring the players. I used to work as a tournament admin, and it was our job to notice this kind of shit, so I'm pretty confident that if Astralis were blatantly seeing the enemies through the smoke, admins definitely would have intervened. Regardless though, Xipnik said that Nico apologized later on, and some of the clips genuinely were insane, but I'm one to talk, I guess. Sometimes your opponent is just having a really good day. To cap off a monumental year, the boys traveled to Odense for EPL Season 8 finals, where Device says this: Astralis, if you could believe it, make it to the finals only dropping a map to Hellraisers because Woxic went 27-13 on Mirage. Sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. After Liquid didn't learn their lesson from the last 4 games they played and let Astralis kick their ass on Nuke again, they tore apart Na'Vi and MIBR before they faced off against Astralis for the 12th total time in 2018. But wait, look at the maps!
We will see the standard bans, and that means that... oh, it's a new... There we go. Oh my god.
Liquid proved to us all that perseverance through trial and error truly does make you better by finally banning Nuke and winning a single single map for the third time in 25 games because of it. Never give up, never surrender. It's too bad they lost the next 3 maps though, but hey, at least they're learning. So Astralis won their 9th tournament of the year on home soil no less and completed the first ever Intel Grand Slam. A $1 million prize for any team that can win 4 events in a 10 event window, which Astralis gracefully earned from the misfortunate corpse of Team Liquid alone. Astralis won Blast Lisbon against Na'Vi to end the year and racked up 10 trophies in total. Their entire roster was listed as top 20 players of 2018, with Dupree and Device both being in the top 5, and Glaive and Magisk being in the top 10. Xyp9x being at 13th somehow doesn't do him enough justice because he is statistically one of the best clutch players the game has ever seen, winning a staggering 68 out of 99 1v1 situations, with 77 1vx situations that year total on top of being a solid support player. Astralis ended the year with a 26-0 win streak on Nuke, only losing once the entire year, and it was an online match where Yugi and Rubino just popped off for no reason. Something windshield, something bug, you get it. Let's get a little inside baseball for a second. In 2018, Astralis averaged plus 30% utility ADR across big events. In a game that's decided by inches, Astralis were doing all that they could in and out of the server to amass these small advantages against other top teams, and it was definitely working. Meanwhile, Liquid, the solidified world number 2 at the time, was losing so hard that Elige was demo reviewing Astralis' tactics on the Team Liquid YouTube channel. 2019 saw Astralis be more selective with the tournaments they attended, partially to avoid burnout and partially due to a partnership with tournament operator Blast. To call it a partnership though is a little bit dishonest, because Blast was owned by a company, Refresh Entertainment, which also happened to be the parent company of Astralis. This obviously raised concerns over a thing called conflict of interest, but for some reason it wasn't really made a big enough deal for anyone to really stop them. So the community just started making fun of them and calling them Blastralis and went on with their day. With Astralis deciding to pick and choose what events they played for the sake of their mental health, and since they were essentially forced to go into these Blast events due to their parent company's obligations, they literally just didn't play in many of the bigger non-major events that year, which opened the doors for some other teams to finally have the spotlight. The year starts out with iBuyPower Masters, where despite their form, Astralis lose a best of 3 to Liquid for the first time since New York 2017. Does this mean they're washed? Not really. Liquid just really wanted this one in front of the home crowd. So Astralis went into IEM Katowice fresh off a loss for the first time in a hot second, but their mental training has evidently paid off as they walk through groups without a sweat, including a 16-0 against Flusha Kiyoshima's Cloud9, and only dropping 1 overtime map to Renegades. You know, windshields and bugs or whatever. Liquid looked poised, going undefeated in the groups and beating Na'Vi for their playoff spot. Many really believed that this would be the one where Liquid finally takes a big event off of Astralis, but out of fucking nowhere, ENCE begins to pull off a miracle run. From going 0-2 in the Legends stage, winning 3 best of 3s in a row, clawing themselves into the playoffs where they beat Team Liquid and Na'Vi to make it to the finals. This was looking like a carbon copy of Boston 2018 with Cloud9, but the only difference is that, alas, ENCE had to play Astralis in their prime. Regrettably, this meant that they were going to get their asses kicked, although everyone was sort of hoping that Astralis would somehow choke. This was sort of like watching the NBA Finals this year, where the Mavs had to play the insanely good Celtics team, and even though everybody was hoping the Celtics would lose, we all knew they wouldn't. And so ENCE proceeded to lose on their highest rated map, which also happened to be one of Astralis' lowest rated maps, before being given no mercy on Inferno. Boom. This meant that the boys 2-0'd every single team in the playoffs on their way to a second consecutive major title. Very quickly, Astralis had created a dynasty, and they were looking scarier than when Luminosity and SK won back-to-back majors. These guys clearly had no intentions of losing, but here's where things get a little finicky. They beat Liquid yet again in the finals of Blast Sao Paulo. Keep in mind, this was their 12th major tournament win in 15 months, and Device was detailing their exciting plans for a few days off in his MVP interview. And a few weeks later, they bomb out of Blast Miami groups, losing a close game to Liquid and getting their shit washed 16-5 and 16-2 by FaZe and MIBR. The second of which being very uncharacteristic for them, because Overpass is one of their better maps. Of course, MIBR were still a fantastic team. They were just nowhere near the level that they used to be, being ranked at 9th in the world at the time. Before this, MIBR had only beat Astralis once on Overpass since 2016, and they played each other a lot since then. But I digress. Bugs and windshields, I need to fucking stop saying that. During spring and into the summer, Astralis had a little bit of difficulty finding their form, losing Blast Madrid to ENCE on Nuke, no less. Multiple interviews with Glaive repeatedly referenced days off and poor individual performances from the team during this period. Being placed in a familiar situation after getting eliminated in the semi-finals of ESL 1 Cologne to Rising Star and Kid Prodigy Zaiwu, losing at ECS Season 7 of Furia didn't make things any better, and then they got the North American Wombo combo at ESL Pro League Season 7 when Energy with Tarek in the upper bracket knocked them down to the quarters, only to then get eliminated at the hands of Team Liquid. They said that they needed to get tougher and get better at trash talking, so they went
was amazing with Astralis. We dominated the whole Counter-Strike scene. There is one factor though that I think needs improvement for 2019, and that's our trash talking. I found a guy who I believe is pretty good at it.
Oh no. How old is Magisk again? Thank God, we're fine. Everything's fine. We're totally good. Speaking of NA though, Liquid was having their hot girl summer, and by hot girl summer, I mean they won every event that Astralis didn't attend, graciously being given the Intel Grand Slam by the generous Danes. To their credit though, Liquid took home ESL 1 Cologne and EPL Season 9 finals that summer as well, which weren't by any means an easy task. But they would also go on to win Blast Los Angeles and IEM Chicago 2019 in Astralis' absence. Rumors of the end of the Astralis dynasty swirled all over Reddit and loomed over their heads since the StarLadder Berlin major was right around the corner and Liquid was winning everything very convincingly. After not playing a single tournament in 2 months, the boys showed up to the second major in Berlin and would have swept the group stage if it weren't for that Tarek guy again. And guess who shows up to the quarterfinals, if not the best team in the world? Team Liquid. Everyone had exceptionally high expectations for Team Liquid and ridiculously low expectations for Astralis coming into this tournament, but if there's one thing you should know by now, it's that you should never count out Astralis during their petty revenge games. While Liquid spent the last 2 months winning everything and practicing their best maps just for this moment, waiting for the opportunity to play against the guys who made their life a living hell for the last 2 years just to get the chance to destroy them on the biggest stage in Counter-Strike, Astralis was secretly planning to hit them with the curveball of the century.
The daring pick is Nuke here is to say, listen, forget everything. Oh my God.
It's happened, the curveball.
They've gone and done it.
Astralis picked Vertigo, a map that they've played only 3 times before. This wasn't a mistake. This was a gambit, and not that gambit. I'm talking the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Gambit. Team Liquid had absolutely no idea what they've been practicing for the last 2 months because they haven't been playing in any tournaments. They were just hiding everything they had up their sleeve until the major. So they took out a rocket and hurled it across the stage. No, I'm kidding. They didn't do that. That would be fucking terrible. With the gambit paying off, Astralis ended Liquid's 4-month reign of terror and quickly shut down NRG, which once again managed to kill Tarek's team. Once again, I am actually serious. Now, the only thing in the way of these Danes getting their 4th major title was up-and-coming team of Vanguard, who were just too inexperienced to stop the old guard in Astralis. They end up taking home the StarLadder trophy, but not before breaking it because they don't need it. They already have 3 others, and didn't drop a single map in the playoffs for the 3rd consecutive major. But Astralis, being the petty team that they are, weren't satisfied with eliminating their sworn rivals from the major though, so they kept their consistency for a little bit longer. Just enough to win IEM Beijing, proving that the major wasn't a fluke, steal their trophy in ECS Season 8 finals, beat them once again in the ESL Pro League Season 10 just because they can, and then eliminate them on Nuke one last time in the Blast Pro Series to take home the trophy in front of Liquid, the same way that they've done many a time before. Real fucking psychopaths if you ask me. They ended 2019 as the best team in the world, winning 6 Tier 1 lands, including both majors that took place that year. This again was already after they had won 9 Tier 1 offline tournaments the year prior. The consistency of this team was incredibly impressive, especially considering the level of competition they saw now compared to the early years of CSGO. This makes it even more shocking that this Blast event would be the last offline trophy that this organization would ever lift, even to the date of this video. And with that being said, 2020 was a complicated year. Astralis would have in total 9 players who played on their roster this year. Beginning with the signing of Esotag in March, Astralis looked to innovate yet again, planning to expand their roster beyond the 5 players and have sort of like bench players that come in for certain maps, which sounds incredibly unfun and demoralizing for all parties involved, like the cuck chair of gaming. And as COVID spread through Europe and shut down everything, Astralis would only win the online qualifiers for the Rio Major that would be cancelled and then reorganized in 2022. Shortly after, they'd signed Yugi, which left a lot of players wondering what the fuck Astralis were even up to. By the end of May, the reasons for expanding the roster would become a little bit more clear when Glaive and Xypnix both took medical leave due to mental stress and burnout. Snappy would also join as a stand-in to round out the roster, but only a few months after signing him. Yugi would get kicked for Bubsky, and throughout this entire time of shuffling, Astralis wouldn't find any success at all. It wasn't until October with the Core 4 and Esotag instead of Xypnix that they'd win EPL Season 12 Europe, and by December, the Legendary 5 were back, this time with Bubsky as a substitute for Xypnix on only Nuke for some reason. They'd win DreamHack Masters Europe and IEM Global Challenge, screwing Liquid in the finals because they have to earn it. They can't be getting diffed this hard for this long. Okay, that was a lot, and I think it's important to tell you now that for this Legendary Core 5 and their coach, the music begins to wind down. Despite finishing 3rd and 4th at the far and away the most important event of the year, HLTV crowned the organization CSGO's top team for the 3rd year in a row. Fnatic and SK winning back-to-back majors, NIP's 87-0 streak to begin CSGO. These were impressive achievements and solidifies all of these rosters as legendary teams, but in an era with Simple, Nico, and Elige all in their prime, ZywOo rapidly up and coming, and many more incredible players that define the game as we know it today, no team did it better for longer than the Danes of Astralis. But they're not fucking dead or anything. They just kind of like sucked after this. Astralis would not win a single tournament in 2021, and to be honest, they wouldn't even come particularly close. They'd finished poorly at IEM Kjaerbye and EPL Season 13, both still online by the way, and Device in an April interview would give the incredibly descriptive prediction that he thinks that it is completely plausible that some things will happen. Some modern day Descartes. 9 days later, just as Device had predicted, he shocked the entire CSGO world by signing with the Swedish roster NIP, and it ended up being one of the fucking worst things he could have ever done. With their franchise opera gone, they'd shuffle 2 of their most recognizable players in and out of the cuck bench for different tournaments, and by the end of the year, Dupree had left for greener pastures, and the era was officially over. Many of the previous Astralis players no longer play, including Kjaerbye, who ended up retiring at a very young age because of how traumatic playing with North was. As for the Astralis organization, the 6-man roster idea never worked because it was a stupid idea, and Bubsky got the shit end of the stick by basically becoming perma-stuck on the bench while having an insanely long contract with the team, making it so he basically never played professionally ever again and retired immediately afterward. I heard he runs a small coffee shop in the heart of Copenhagen, and they have these beautiful benches where you can sit and just watch the world go by. Hey, what the fuck? What? Did you guys see that? What was that? You don't gotta subscribe if you don't want to, but if you did, thank you. I really appreciate you if you watched this far regardless, and let me know if I got anything wrong with this video or what kind of stuff you'd want to see me cover in the future. I do actually read all of my comments, even though I haven't uploaded in a while. I promise I still do. I'm also an editor for other creators on YouTube, so it's hard for me to find time to write and edit my own stuff, but I really do love doing these. So again, let me know what you think and if I should keep making videos like these. As a kid, I would have never imagined doing a sponsored segment for War Thunder, so thanks to them again for giving me the opportunity to do so. Also, please don't forget to use my link in the pinned comment or the video description and play it for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms, including multiple premium vehicles and other goodies. Again, only available for a limited time only, so make sure not to miss it. If you made it this far or are hearing this at all, I want to thank you specifically for watching this video and not those other guys who didn't watch till the end. Yuck, imagine not supporting your favorite creator. But seriously, thank you for choosing my video instead of all the other videos you could have chosen, and you should check out my other videos on my channel. I got sort of similar stuff, or you could just watch them all. That'd be pretty cool. But either way, I'll catch you in the next one. See you.